I haven't been to an enduro race I don't even know. I'm not gonna bother counting the years, but it was an EWS the last time I went.
Right.
So that tells you how long ago it was. What's like the main differences that you could pinpoint going to a race nowadays?
Exactly. Like I've been to every EWS and now EDR since 2018, I want to say. And I've seen the entire progression. There was a point in 2017, 2018, even 2019, where it kind of seemed like enduro would be the future, right? There were a bunch of downhill racers starting to do enduro. Sponsors were starting to realize it would be good. It's a mass market sport. Most people ride the bikes that they race. So there's a lot of comparison. And then COVID sort of changed things a bit. At the same time, Warner Brothers Discovery acquired enduro, basically.
Yeah.
And the push was, okay, like downhill, we're going to find the best way to televise this sport. And they tried for 3 to 5 years. But I think in the end, they realized that an enduro race is so long. Sometimes they're out there for 8 hours.
Sometimes they're 2 days.
Yeah, sometimes they're 2 days too. And no one's going to tune in for an 8-hour program, you know? And they were able to cut them down to about like an engaging hour, but it couldn't be live. So they had this interesting thing where they were trying to make it live and trying to make it engaging, but the sports format wasn't really allowing for that. And it sort of is what it is. Like you can't change enduro to make it work. And they tried a few times with like a pro stage. They tried filming different stages. They tried formatting the highlight reel a little bit differently. But in the end, what's tried and true for the highlight reel is just going over stage by stage winners and such. And really enthusiast riders will enjoy that, but people from outside the sport will find that a bit dull. Now, we're getting into 2025. They pretty much realized that there's no way for enduro to go live. No one's going to tune in for 8 hours. And also, if you're going to televise the last stage, the entire race is almost decided by then. Sometimes there's 30 seconds to a minute separating multiple places.
There's no story. It's just, you're not going to tune in to watch a victory run.
Exactly. So, okay, that's hard. And it's a lot of resources to make that happen. What can they do now? So they've just released, as of, I want to say a month ago, Grit and Glory, which is going to be the drive to survive of enduro mountain biking. And I think this, if executed correctly, can be the future for enduro. And over a long enough time period, it can catch up with downhill in terms of potential funding or backing. Because imagine people like with Drive to Survive going to watch the stories, falling in love with the characters, and watching it on any evening throughout the year compared to only when that event's going on. And it could be, if done right, a bigger mass market product. But I fear that it's going to take a year or two for that to catch up. So enduro is in an interesting place where there's not a whole lot of funding in it in general. You know, different results might not change your career. And will enough riders be able to get to the next season or that next season? And will enough teams be able to, so that they can now see the benefits of that series and see the actual dollars come back to them?
I mean, it's the typical evolution, right? Like, I guess the brands, if they want to continue selling bikes and continue marketing them in the race format, like in enduro, they're going to keep evolving with the networks as well.
Another point is way back in the EWS days, they were doing these more adventure races where you'd have a 4-day race. It was on some island somewhere or in South America. And I think that's where enduro really flourished and thrived. And I think they're realizing that again. And they're realizing also that for enduro to succeed, they need to make the sport the most exciting sport possible for this docuseries format. And I think, in my opinion, that like exotic location play could be the way to make it happen. Because in addition to the good racing, people are going to be tuning in to see this new place. People are going to be going like, hey, maybe I want to travel here to ride these trails that the race is going to do. And that could be a possible avenue too.
I mean, highlighting the locations is definitely a good way to bring in some non-endemic dollars. I know a lot of those places probably have like tourism boards, and you can get some funding and some permitting and some benefits that way. But going all the way back to EWS stuff, like looking at kind of what you were talking about, how it looked like it was going to be the thing and it was going to start, you know, maybe overtaking downhill, because at that point downhill was like kind of in question. I kind of go back to the organizers, the people pushing the buttons of EWS back in the day, relying on the industry too much to make the sport happen. When you look at it, it was the industry and the brands that were paying the athletes. They were sponsoring the tour. They were paying for the mechanics and all of the infrastructure that comes and creates the festival village for the event. They were paying for entries. That's what's crazy, is like as a sponsor of the series, when I was working for a brand, we would spend 25 grand or whatever it was to be the tour sponsor. We still had to pay entries for every single rider that got in there. And I still have this picture in my mind when all of that kind of adding up to seeing Richie Rude on top of the podium holding a €335 check.
Yeah.
I'm like thinking to myself, wow, there was also 400 amateurs. They're paying 200 pounds, whatever money that is, to enter this race, doing some quick math. And it's like, okay, who's from the organization that stands to benefit from this working? Where is their risk? Where is their investment? And I know it takes money and it takes things to make it happen. And maybe that's the reason why. I certainly don't know what was going on behind the scenes, but just that missing non-endemic support or that sales of that sponsorship with the organization of EWS pushing to get somebody besides the bike industry to support the sport, whether it was entries, whether it was sponsorship, paying the athletes, all of those things. There needed to be some other thing making it happen, because 2019, the bike industry blew up a little bit and then it went down, and now it's like enduro's in question because there's no support. There's top riders, top 3, top 5 riders with no sponsors. There's people struggling to get from event to event. There's teams folding every day pretty much. Like, yeah, the bike industry can't support everything. But then you look at other sports and you see how many other brands and other sponsors are supporting the infrastructure and the organization to make the events actually happen. Like, I'm pretty sure that like Manchester United is not registering their athletes when they go out of town and play an out of town team. Like, they don't have to pay for anything probably.
Right.
They don't have to rent the locker room, or, it's just, it seems like there needs to be some support from the outside in order for it to succeed.
Right. And I think it's a chicken and egg situation, because the sport needs to get to the outside of just enthusiast mountain bikers. And I think that's what this docuseries is going to do.
I like it. It's a good direction.
Yeah. They're the best situated to make that happen now. But I'm just worried there's going to be an area between that. Riders are going to drop out, teams are going to drop out, and the next chapter of Enduro could be really great and fruitful for everyone, but we just need to make sure we're all in it still.
Yeah. I mean, it's always going to be better, right? Like, that's the whole thing. It always gets better, always gets more profitable, always gets smoother. Like, look at, well, maybe not all the time, because BMX, it was way better when I was doing it, I think, but people that go through it always think that probably. But yeah, I totally hear what you're saying on that point. I mean, it's like, what gets somebody into a sport? They can relate to it, right? And then when they go out and do that sport, they want to like experience some of what they're seeing. And not everybody is the best in the world. And like, I forget, what is it? I can't remember the Netflix golf series, Swing Away, maybe? Full Swing. There you go. Full Swing. There's like, my favorite character is like the guy that doesn't do that good, but he's like at the bar partying, and he's like just a normal, regular guy, not flying in a private jet. And just like, that's the guy who I relate to. So now if I like got to Twilight, I'm like, doing my little shimmy, and I'm like thinking about him, and I'm like, I have that experience in my mind. But in the past, when it was like only highlighting the guys that are winning and the people dominating, not only did that limit the stories they could tell to the point where like, yeah, you had to make them protected because nobody knows anyone else. You got to make sure you're highlighted riders in the event. Well, that eliminates that by having these other characters involved, and it just expands the people that can relate to it. So, man, I'm all for it, and I hope it works.
Yeah, and I hope that it can provide riders that have given their life to this sport a real avenue to make money, real money, because even prize money in the top 10 or even top 5, that's not going to do it. And nowadays, with how little the teams are getting, that's not going to do it either. So there needs to be something else.
Yeah. To answer your question, like, you hope the people that are here now are going to benefit from what is going to be. I would say in my history, if 15 or 20% of the people here now are around to benefit from that plan, that's a good ratio.
You think so?
It's the hard truth, but that's a good ratio.
Yeah, I mean, the hard truth too is in sports careers, they're not incredibly long. They have a lifespan. Once you get to 33, 35, whatever, maybe you're going to struggle. Some people have done it really well. Cecile Ravenel into almost 40 years old, or Greg Minnaar.
But was also forced to retire and kind of doesn't really ride anymore because of injury. So there's that line you got to walk, right?
Exactly. So I think everyone that's involved is just hopeful that they can make it to that point.
Yeah, I think that's no matter what stage of what things are in, that's usually the case. Exactly. Yeah, this is ground level, and it'll be exciting to see how this changes the participation and the excitement. I think it goes along with, the whole sport. We talked about it before, I think, about the sport becoming a lifestyle sport. Mm-hmm. I mean, having those series and those different characters to relate to and getting behind the scenes, I think that's what's going to do it. If that's how they do the series and they actually go home with these athletes and people see how they're living and doing things like these other docuseries do, I think that's going to really, really expand people's view of it.
Yeah, and just bring so many opportunities for sponsorship in, because then they're getting the energy drink and the recovery mix and the shoes that they're wearing on day to day. And that's just the situation that the sport needs to be in. And I think one misconception is through this 5-year period of potential bumpiness for the sport, the races have been really, really great.
Yeah, the racing's been tight.
Yeah, it's been tight. There's plenty of people there. The organization runs everything really well on the ground. It's just that not every time does all that information get out in a mass market way to people, because sometimes it's not covered on Pink Bike. It doesn't show up in that one video or whatever it is. But the sport itself is there and alive in a big way. It's just making sure there's enough funding to make the riders be able to travel the world, do that. And now, can they make this TV show as good as it needs to be? I think they can. It's Warner Brothers Discovery. It's going to be on HBO Max. Nowadays, with the syndications of subscriptions, most people will have this sort of subscription. They'll be able to watch it. And if it's done well, it's going to be great.
Yeah. I don't know. I think the make or break is if they have whatever the production company that's doing it is from a bicycle background or a bike competitive background. It doesn't have to be necessarily enduro, but somebody who understands bikes and competition and the history and where things have come and where the sport is trying to go. Because that's a collective way of thinking that comes off in production. And that's really what kind of makes or breaks a lot of those types of shows.
Exactly. And from my understanding, it is bike people. It's people that have been involved with that scene for a while. And more importantly, are they storytelling people? Are they good producers? You've seen the Tour de France show. Excellent show. The Drive to Survive show. Excellent show. And they're more or less, I think, produced by similar people. And they have that one sort of hook and story that they always tell. And if they could copy paste that, it's going to be super successful.
Dude, I'm sure it's a formula. I'm sure they have it in the editing room on a bar graph generated by AI. This percentage of family content will get you this many likes and clicks and views and shares. You're shaking your head. Am I right? Yeah, babe. Yeah. So it's all calculated. So let's hope that formula that they do have works on mountain bikes as well, because it can only be good for us.
Exactly.